Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today College Football Blitz podcast as we offer up game analysis, trends, injury news, and more. OFN Today is brought to you by ourlads.com, primesportsnetwork.com, and Athlon Sports. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover in a short period of time, as always, as we will start off by, first of all, talking about the updated championship odds. So let's go ahead and do that. Right now, you've got basically a top six, which I just think any of these six are worthy of a championship. And we have our futures that we post at primesportsnetwork.com. You can check that out every week. So you got Alabama, Clemson, still the top co-favorites, but keep in mind they've gone from 2-1 to 3-1. Ohio State, Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma range from 5-1 to 9-1. And I think that what you're going to have to do is come up with, well, first of all, you got to put the mindset that none of these teams are going undefeated. And I even think that you can look at the Big 12 or the ACC and go, yeah, but their schedule not as tough as the SEC, or hey, you might even say the same thing about Ohio State's schedule. But I think that there are enough pitfalls, even with Ohio State. They've got back-to-back end of the season, Penn State and Michigan. They also have to play Wisconsin. So there's still some game and a Big Ten championship game. Then you've got Oklahoma. Look, Baylor, Iowa State, Texas this week, Big 12 championship game. Texas, basically the same thing. And then Clemson, I'm sorry, but the way they're playing, as I've been saying for weeks, do you really think they're going undefeated? I don't see it. So, and I know some people believe if Clemson loses a football game that they're not going to be in the playoffs with one loss because of the conference, and I just don't think that's the truth. I think if they were to lose this week to Florida State, run the table, win the ACC championship game, and get better as the year progresses, look like they're firing on all cylinders. If everyone else has a loss, I think Clemson will be in the playoffs. So I don't think it's necessary. So what you got to do is just find a long shot. Can someone get into this top six? And I think the teams that might have the most intriguing chance, it's not going to be Florida for me at 20-1. They're the top long shot team behind the Big Six. I just don't think they have enough offense right now, and the defense is good, but they're going to have to start playing some tougher teams as well. And they have to play an SEC championship game, maybe, because I don't see them beating Georgia. So I just beating Georgia and winning an SEC championship game, you can keep it 20-1. That's why if I'm thinking Wisconsin, Penn State, further down, I'm thinking Penn State, to tell you the truth, because they will play Ohio State, and they get Ohio, even though they have to go on the road, they still have they get their shot. Again, so if they lose this week against Iowa, Penn State can run the table, beat Ohio State on the road, win the Big Ten championship game, and they might have a chance for the playoffs. Wisconsin, they need to show me more. Show me more against Michigan State. Win the game the way Ohio State beat Michigan State. That's what I want to see. Show me something like that, like the way you beat Michigan. Show me that again. You can do that, I'm sold. But Michigan State just happens to be my top double-digit upset of the week, so I don't think it's going to happen. That's why Penn State 33-1. I'm willing to give them a chance because they have one of the best defenses, as we talked about in the beginning of the season, before the season began, actually. And we also thought that Clifford was going to be a good backup or a new starter taking over from McSorley. They have one of the fine young tight ends in college football in Freiermuth. So I think Penn State, long shots, 33-1. Okay, I'll throw it in there. I'll also talk about 350-1 shots, Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas, because if Oregon can run the table and do it convincingly, then they'll have a shot. I don't think they'll get in. I think they need some 2-loss teams, which, again, the schedule the way that it is, how tough it is with those 6 teams battling it out. I think there's more parity this year than we've seen in years, to tell you the truth, which I love. I think there's a shot. I really do. I think there's a shot for a one-loss Oregon or let's say, a one-loss Notre Dame. I think and let's also not forget Texas, who might have the best chance because they could beat Oklahoma this week and run the table. And I'm sorry, but everybody's got a loss. And Texas beats Oklahoma, and their only loss is against LSU. And let's say LSU's in the playoffs, which I believe they will be, then why wouldn't you put Texas in the Final Four? Or why wouldn't they be a serious consideration? So 50-1, Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon, 33-1 Penn State. Those are the long shots I would keep an eye on. Heisman, I don't know where all of a sudden everybody started on this Tua thing the last week or two. He's like an overwhelming favorite now for doing what? He's put up once again all a guy like Tua has done because he hasn't played anybody yet. So what? Because you may be the number one pick of the draft, we're going to give you a Heisman? That shouldn't have any correlation. So let's see what he does when it matters the most. That's why when they do play the big games, if he doesn't come through, and we've seen him be shaky before, we've also seen him get banged up before. It is more than possible that he could have a hiccup or two, and then where's the door open? And I think it opens to Burrow. Since I've been big on LSU before the season began, they were my top sleeper. What were they, like 33-1 at the time? They were the championship. Everything has been going great for LSU for us this year. I don't see any reason that's not going to continue. So but he is 5-1 to win the Heisman. So it's not like making any money off of it. That's why I would look at Trevor Lawrence at 30-1. If he can get on a roll and start coming up with big plays, and hey, he had a big touchdown late against North Carolina to win that football game. So if he can continue to do that a few times, problem is there just aren't going to be enough big games for him to win, which is why his odds are 30-1. That's why Ellinger, I would watch at 40-1. You can't take anything away from that performance against LSU. They just had no defense. It wasn't his fault. He did everything he could. So why is he 40 and Burrow 5? Because he lost and they won. So if Ellinger can beat Oklahoma this week, everybody will be watching and put a Heisman performance together, that 40-1 cuts in half minimum. He might even be 10-1 by next week. I would also consider maybe Herbert, but he's more of a long shot at 60-1 or even Fromm, because they'll be in, especially Fromm. Fromm will be in big games, but he's not a sexy quarterback, and you got to be sexy to win the Heisman most of the time. Herbert's just not going to get chances unless he can do special things and not have Oregon rely on their defense like they have been. And I don't think it's his fault. They just have had a bunch of banged-up receivers. He's got a good tight end. That's like the best receiver on the team right now, and that's not going to help his sexy numbers. Okay, injuries to keep an eye on this week, and we'll run through them as well through the games. But so let me just talk about some key injuries and suspensions that you need to keep an eye on. And this is all of college football. We'll go alphabetically. Arkansas State DB Darian Jackson is going to be missing time for personal reasons, and he was a third-team player last year and might even be their top defender this year. Boy, the Red Wolves have been injury-prone and personal this. And I mean, they lost their starting quarterback. They lost 2 of their top 3 receivers and their top corner, Jerry Jacobs, for the season. So they've been real banged up, Arkansas State, this year. Auburn lost Whitlow. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. Baylor lost their top offensive lineman. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. Now, BYU, we've told you about losing Zach Wilson for about a couple of months. So the redshirt freshman gets to start this week at South Florida by the name of Jaron Hall, and he will become the first African-American quarterback to start a game for the BYU program ever. So that'll be interesting. It's a little interesting side note there. Central Michigan. Now, even though I still like him this week, their quarterback, David Moore, who replaced Dormady. Now, Dormady started week 1, got injured week 2. He had a knee injury. Moore came in, and he's not, I don't think he's as good as Dormady, but he took a lot of hits. He was admired by his teammates, being tough, hanging in there. And hey, Central Michigan's got 3 wins already. They had, what, 1 win last year? Now, Moore has been suspended, and it's probably gone for the year. Substance abuse, from what I understand. That means that Dormady, coming off the knee injury. Now, this is the trick, though. You got to keep an eye. For what we understand, he's ready to play, Dormady, because they're going to need him now. So will they? Does he need to be rushed? Because that's the big deal here in my mind of whether you take him or not. Because if he plays, I definitely like Central Michigan in their game this week. Now, Charlotte continues to deal with key injuries. They're not getting any healthier there. Gemmel, their top linebacker, still out. Not sure if he's going to play this week. Their leading tackler, the kid Marquavis Gibbs, has been banged up playing lately. He's questionable again. And don't forget their leading tackler from last season, Ben DeLuca, the safety's out for the year. Colorado's got a lot of injuries you want to keep an eye on. Chenault, the star receiver, their top defensive lineman, Mustafa Johnson, and the transfer, the kid Unu, the safety's banged up. They've already lost their starter, Chris Miller, the corner, for the season. So keep an eye on those injuries Friday night at Oregon. Those are some players that Colorado wants to play in a big game, and a game that I think will be just as close as the Cal game, maybe closer from last week. And remember, we took Cal as a heavy dog last week. C.J. Henderson, the top corner for Florida, who's missed the last 4 games with an ankle injury, may return this week. And obviously, that would be a big boost if they can get him back against that prolific passing attack. I can't believe we're saying that, from LSU. Georgia Southern not playing this week, but they lost their top running back, Logan Wright. He's out 4 to 6 weeks with a neck injury. Illinois, Brandon Peters would love to play against Michigan, his former team, but he got banged up last week, so we'll find out. Right now he's questionable. One of the reasons I think the SEC might have 3 upsets this week, one of them Kentucky, because Sawyer Smith is just not 100%, and he'll probably play. So I think Kentucky's vulnerable. Grant Delpit, the star safety, who could be a top 10 draft pick this year, is questionable with a head injury against Florida. And Terrace Marshall, who has 6 touchdowns already for the Tigers, looks like he's going to miss a second game with a leg injury. Now, Maryland and Purdue. Purdue's got a ton of injuries. Of course, the quarterback, Sindelar, is out. The star wide receiver, Rondell Moore, looks like he might miss a second game. They've also lost 2 starting defensive tackles, Neal and Watts, and they've already been without their top linebacker for the season, Bailey. But for Maryland, Josh Jackson, the quarterback's out. So he's out. But Pogromi is going to start, and he's started before several times for Maryland. So you still got to kind of favor Maryland in that one. I don't know if I'll take that game, though. More on that later. Mississippi State, Tommy Stevens may not be ready to return this week. And I do think that's significant because they don't have a passing game without him. Missouri, the second-ranked defense in college football, lost their best defender. Cale Garrett led the team in tackles when he got injured. Matter of fact, he led the team in tackles the last 2 seasons and was leading the team in tackles again this season, and he tore his pec out for the year. Big blow from Missouri. Another reason why I think there might be an upset in that game. Nebraska. Now, Khalil Davis, their top pass rusher, was suspended last week, so we don't know if he's going to play yet this week at Minnesota. And Adrian Martinez, the quarterback, and Spielman, their top receiver, are questionable. Part of the reason why Minnesota is one of my top picks this week. Chase Claypool may not play, the number 1 receiver for Notre Dame this week against USC, but they get Armstrong back. He's been out since week 1. Rutgers is going to get blown out again, and it doesn't help that their star running back, Blackshear, has decided to redshirt. South Carolina top defender DJ Woodham's out 2 to 3 weeks. Not good timing as they travel to Georgia. Florida, remember I told you BYU is going to be without their quarterback? So will Florida, it looks like. Blake Barnett did not play last week with an ankle injury. He will not play again this week. Caden Stearns. Look, Texas needs all the defense they can get, and maybe this is part of the reason Texas is the line keeps going up, because he's their top defender and he's not going to be able to play, it looks like. He's been out for a few weeks with a leg injury. I don't agree with the line. I like Texas, but just remember Stearns is out. Texas Tech loses their top lineman, Jack Anderson, for the season. Alan Bowman, the quarterback, still out. Spencer Brown, the top running back for UAB, out with a foot injury. Utah gets Zach Moss back. That's huge. Anytime they got Moss and quarterback Huntley, they probably are the best team in the Pac-12. And unfortunately, Britton Covey lost for the season again with a knee injury. Too bad for him. West Virginia loses two of their three top wide receivers for this game against Iowa State. Sam James leads the team with 32 receptions, 329 yards. He will not play with a head injury. Keep an eye on Western Michigan's quarterback, Wasink. Heard that he might be a little bit banged up. Okay, now let's get to the games, the trends, and so forth. SEC. We're gonna remember I said, hey, I gotta figure out a way to get into this instead of chronologically. We'll go by conference, and finally I was able to do it right. So SEC, Florida LSU. That's the big game. The 10th ranked defensive Florida, the 2nd ranked offensive LSU. Second true road game for Florida. Keep that in mind. The first one was kind of ugly. The win against Kentucky. That's the one they lost their quarterback. Franks Trask came in, led the comeback. I just think, look, the thing that concerns me about this game is the spread, and that's it. It's 13. It's big. But I just can't see. Florida's, in my opinion, they're not that good a football team to win a game of that magnitude last week and then the very next week go on the road and beat a team that much better than LSU. It's asking too much. It doesn't mean Florida's not a good football team. It's just that the timing is not right. Still a lot of points. If I was taking the game, I'd take LSU. Not sure I'm taking the game, but LSU's the better team. Alabama, Texas A&M, and you kind of want to Jimbo Fisher, Mond. You want to take him to maybe pull off one upset this year, but Alabama, I mean, come on. They are a 6-1 dog. It's tempting, but still, Texas A&M. When they come off a bye, do you realize that they dropped 13 straight covers off a bye? I mean, I don't even know what that's about because it's not like it's been with Jimbo Fisher the whole time. So, and the other thing is Texas A&M historically just does not play well against the better teams, and that's not good as far as the trend is concerned. Excuse me, the spread is concerned, which again is 16.5. Okay, now the 3 upsets in the SEC. Actually, I think there could be 4 upsets, and there won't be. But if we can get 2 of them, we got a shot to make some money. Tennessee plus 220 against Mississippi State. Again, without Stevens, I think Mississippi State's vulnerable there in the passing game. It's only the second road game for the Bulldogs. First road game didn't go that well. They got destroyed by Auburn. Maurer. Now, I know the second half wasn't as good as the first half against Georgia, but he sparked Tennessee. And I believe, I know Mitch Light, we did the college football show, we taped it a little while ago, talked about comparing the previous number 1 for Tennessee. And I see a difference between the two guys. To me, the kid Maurer, now you can say what you want about, can he read defenses, can he do this, can he do that? But this kid Morrow, to me, looks like he's got a better arm. It looks like he's a little bit more composed, especially for a freshman in a big spot. So I am buying in to the fact that this kid is going to be their quarterback now for the next several years. That's why I'm going to take Tennessee in that one to pull off the upset. I also think Ole Miss is worth a shot as an upset. They're almost a 4-1 upset. I like the way they've been playing with Plumlee. Keep in mind, they got 2 former head coaches at the coordinating positions. Plumlee is going to only get better each week with Rich Rod as his coordinator. Missouri, remember, they've got the injury to Cale Garrett. Bryant may not be 100% with the knee. 5th straight home game for Missouri. I think that gets old. 12's a big number. Definitely like Ole Miss in the points. Why not roll the dice on the money line? I would consider that. I'd also consider the same thing with Arkansas, 2-1, or take the 7 against Kentucky. Sawyer Smith's shoulder is just not anywhere near 100%. One hit, and you got to go to basically what would be their 4th-string quarterback when the season began. That ain't any good. It ain't good in the NFL. It certainly ain't good in college in places like Kentucky. So I think Arkansas might have got something going with the loss to Texas A&M by now they play Kentucky. So I think Arkansas is also a pretty good potential upset choice. And UNLV, the trend of the week, I'll even say the useless trend of the week. Vanderbilt is 0-18 straight up the last 18 years in Game 6 of the season. How about that one? And I did have to go back to 2009 to find out that the last time Vandy was a favorite in Game 6, 2009, 10-point favorite against Army, they lost. And that was not a Monken Army team. That was a 5-win Army team. So, again, it's a useless trend. Only, I shouldn't even call it useless. I should just, they made something else for that, because it's not useless if it works. Because, come on, if UNLV wins on Saturday after what I just told you about that trend, then that's just freaking crazy. UNLV's a 4-1 money line. All right, Big Ten. Number 4 defense, Penn State against number 5 defense, Iowa. The difference between both teams, even though Stanley might be on par with Clifford, and you think he should be, he's more experienced, Penn State's offense is just rolling right now. They're just playing better. I mean, you saw what happened last week. That was terrible. I mean, that was a disgrace. I couldn't believe that my 5-star pick gave up 10 points, and I was getting 4, and I couldn't cover. Anyway, James Franklin, though, as a head coach, not just Penn State, as a head coach, 2-11 straight up, 1-12 against the spread away from home versus conference teams with an above 6.66 winning percentage. Iowa's 80%. You would like to take Iowa there, maybe. Keep in mind, Penn State has beaten Iowa the last 3 years, and they've beaten them 5 overall straight since 2011. So there's that. I just like Penn State because they're a better team. Look, and Franklin has won a couple of games in that trend. So I think this is a good spot because the number's kind of low, too. It's 3.5. I am concerned with it, though. I will say that. I don't think Penn State's going to win this game easy. I can see it being the type of game it was last week with Iowa and Michigan. You know, the kind of ugly, low-scoring affair where every point matters. But, yeah, Penn State's the better team. Michigan State, Wisconsin. Again, my top double-digit upset of the week. I just think I saw enough out of Michigan State early last week against Ohio State, which leads me to believe their defense, one of the best in football, is going to be able to stop Wisconsin for most of the game because they could hold Ohio State for about a quarter, but they're just too explosive. Wisconsin doesn't have that type of explosion. I could see Michigan's defense doing a pretty good job on Taylor, and if they stop Taylor, you're going to stop Wisconsin. So I think this is an even game. I really do. I think this is a game that can go either way. So I'll take Michigan State plus 350 on the money line in that one. And here's an interesting note. Even though these two teams have only played once the last 6 years, the dog has covered 8 of the last 9 in the series, if you want to go by that. It's also the 5th straight home game for Wisconsin, just like Missouri. But Wisconsin's got some really tough road games coming up. 4 of the last 6 on the road. Minnesota is one of my top picks. They're a 7-point favorite against Nebraska. Nebraska's 1-5 against the spread this year. Again, they got some injuries for Nebraska thrown in there. Rodney Smith had a big game on the ground for the Gophers, 2-11. And Minnesota, as I said a few times this week, they've got the most underrated receiving core. The tandem of Johnson and Bateman is as good as there is in college football. Michigan, Illinois, they get Penn State next week on the road, wide out. So they better make sure that this game is one of those games that they don't really sweat much because Penn State next week, and then they host Notre Dame after that. Maryland, Purdue, we told you about all the injuries in that one. Now, Maryland has dropped 12 straight covers after they have won straight up and against the spread in the conference. So that's not promising to take Maryland, a 3.5-point favorite. But Purdue's got all these injuries, too. Now, the X factor could be Aiden O'Connell because Plummer, who hasn't looked good at quarterback for Sindelar, is sharing reps with O'Connell. So if this O'Connell kid comes in and actually does something, then it's possible that Maryland trend could come back to bite him again. And keep in mind, Purdue was embarrassed the last time they played Maryland back in 2016, 50-7. So that's why I'm staying away from the game, because you got, even though Pigrom has started 4 times in 3 years, that's not a lot to go on, and we don't know much about O'Connell. And Purdue's at home. Indiana, this is one of Mitch's top picks, and I totally agree. 27-point favorite against Rutgers. They have dropped 4 straight up ATS Rutgers by a 160-23 margin. That is ugly. Indiana 5-1 against the spread. Their last 6 is a home favorite, including 1-0 this year. Love the way Penix played against Michigan State. I think the kid might be for real. Their next 3 games are winnable. Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern. So if they beat Rutgers, you could be looking at Indiana turning a corner here on their way to a bowl season. And by the way, they're coming off a bye after a loss, so I don't think they want to screw around with Rutgers. Tonight, ACC, Syracuse, NC State. I don't know why Syracuse is getting 5 against NC State. I'm taking Syracuse and the 5 in that one. They, by the way, will host Pittsburgh next Friday night. Now, Syracuse has not done well as a dog this year, but NC State's dropped 3 straight covers. They got nothing at quarterback. I think this is just reputation. I still think Syracuse is a better team than NC State, and I'm going to go ahead and take Syracuse and the 5 tonight. I'm also taking Virginia on Friday night against Miami, getting 3. Miami has dropped all 3 games as a favorite this year. Virginia, meanwhile, has covered 5 straight at Miami. 4 straight at Miami. And beginning of the season, Virginia was the pick to beat out Miami to play in the ACC championship game. So this is one of those games where if they're the better team, they're going to win. I think they're the better team. Now, Florida State. Am I crazy enough to put money on the money line? This would have been one of those games, and I've done a lot of them, and I've lost a lot of them this year. The games where, I probably don't think they're going to win, but I'll give them a shot. There's a shot. This is one of those games. There's a shot because, as I've been saying for weeks, Clemson just does not look good on offense. And if that happens again this week, and in Florida State, Briles calling plays and they've got strike capabilities, then why wouldn't I think Florida State, bing, bing, couple plays here and there, could cause Clemson to feel pressure? And I also said a few weeks ago that if Clemson's going to lose, which I believe they will, and they're going to lose as a heavy favorite this year, that they're going to do it at home. Now, I was thinking more in the lines of Wake Forest, but sometimes it happens when you don't think it's going to happen. And that's why it would be. Now, Blackman's not my choice for quarterback, but I believe that he's got a real short hook. If they win this game, Florida State, or if they're even close in this game, I think it's going to be Hornibrook at quarterback in the 4th quarter. But, hey, you know what? Blackman's got talent. We'll see whether or not he can pull it out. But I will take the 27, and I'll throw a couple of bucks on the money line. Okay, moving on to Wake Forest, another one of my top picks. Now I'm going to go head-to-head with Mitch here because Mitch has Louisville as his upset play this week, 2-1 money line dog. But I've been high in Wake Forest since the last couple of years, as you know. Big Dave Clawson fan, also big Jamie Newman fan. Been talking up Newman since last year. Matter of fact, when there was a quarterback battle before the season began, we talked about this. No battle. Come on. Newman's the guy. He's been fantastic. Florida State's in a nice position right now. They get Florida State next week, then a bye, I believe. They have won their last 2 years against Louisville. They've covered 5 straight years, I believe, against Louisville as well. Louisville is 0-6 against the spread their last 6 as a road dog, including 0-1 this year. Louisville had a nice win last week. To me, it's one of those situations where, okay, you got that win, a lot you go spent with that type of win. You go on the road, you're playing a better football team. I actually think this is disrespectful to Wake Forest. We'll see if I'm right. By the way, Duke is 4-1 straight up, 5-0 against the spread the last 5 years against Georgia Tech. They're a 17.5-point favorite. The Jackets are 0-4 against the spread this year. Okay, Oklahoma, Texas. Now, I have to decide whether to use this as one of my double-digit upsets, and if I do, it's a 3-1 money line basically, or do I put Texas as my 5-star, and basically that's a $300 return as well. That's what I have to think about. But the trends to me are I think that's exactly how it's going to go in my mind this week. The last 5 meetings decided by 7 points or less. I think that continues. I think Ellinger, I think because he's been in this spot before, and Hurts has been in this spot in other games, not in this rivalry. Texas already has a loss. They're more desperate. I'm taking Texas to win the game, but would I feel more comfortable with 12 as a 5-star? I might, but I think Texas. I actually think they're going to win the game. I really do. I think both these teams are very equal. I mean, Texas losing at home to 7 to LSU is nothing to be bad about. All right, Baylor, Matt Rule, 16-3 against the spread versus conference foes, coming off a double-digit straight-up win, and he's already 1-0 in that trend this year. Anderson, the best offensive lineman, is out for the season for Texas Tech. I've already mentioned that. Duffy had a big game last week. We'll see if that continues. I would favor Baylor in this game, though, minus 11. I'm probably staying away from Iowa State minus 10 against West Virginia, but even though with the injuries for West Virginia, because this is one of those situations, Iowa, the first time they're favored against West Virginia, the last 7 years they've been dogs. Now they're all of a sudden a 10-point favorite. I'm a little bit concerned with that. I know who the better team is, though. All right, Pac-12. Keep an eye on the injuries for Colorado, as I already mentioned. Colorado 2-0, straight up and against the spread, away from home this year. Oregon, very good defense. And they showed it against a weak quarterback last week, but that was a close football game. Cal was in it in the fourth quarter. Now, Colorado doesn't have their defense, Cal's defense, but they're a lot more explosive on offense. 21. Come on. I think Colorado. Now, look, Nixon, the other receiver, and Chenault are both banged up. That is a concern to me. Oh, they've got banged up tight ends. They're an injured team, Colorado. But I just got a feeling they are going to be in this game. It's one of those Pac-12 games like Stanford beat Washington last week. Did anybody see that coming? I think this is one of those games where Colorado is going to be in this game. That's my feeling. I also like Arizona against Washington. We've been talking them up this year. I even said this at the beginning of the season when I said Arizona was my sleeper in the Pac-12. I said they'd be my sleeper and they were going to lose to Hawaii week 1. That's been working out really well for me. But I really look Arizona. The offense, Tate, they've been amazing. They're getting 6 at home against Washington. This is all reputation. That's all it is. Notre Dame. I see no reason that Notre Dame doesn't just blitz through USC the way they have the last few years. USC is 1-14 against the spread. Their last 15 is a road dog. That's pathetic. So I really like Notre Dame, one of my top picks. Arizona State, 0-2 against the spread at home this year. That concerns me, but they're a better team than Washington State right now, and it's only a 1-point spread. I would take the Sun Devils. Washington State's dropped 3 straight covers. Zach Moss returns for Utah this week, by the way. Not good news for Oregon State. AAC, Taylor still questionable for Memphis. Gainwell's done a fantastic job filling in. Memphis is 1-10 against the spread in their last 11 away games versus opponents off double-digit straight-up win. They're also 2-16 against the spread. Their last 18 is a favorite of less than 7 points versus an opponent off a straight-up win. More importantly, Temple, which I've said from the beginning of the season, I like Temple. They're 3-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread at home this year. They're 2-2 straight up, 4-0 against the spread against Memphis as AAC foes. They're also 7-1 against the spread their last 8 as a home dog, including beating Maryland outright. So I like Temple to win this game outright. They're getting 6, and we'll see which way I go as far as the money line or the points. Keep an eye on Houston as a dog. They're a dangerous dog. They are 3-0 ATS is a home dog since the start of the 2013 season. But even more, 15-2-1. Last 18 is dogs of more than 1 point, including 3-1 this year. The only loss was the crazy loss to Tulane at the end of the game. But how about this to hurt you? Dana Holgerson teams have dropped 12 covers, 0-12, after a bye versus sub 750 teams. So, ouch. Cincinnati 4-1 against the spread this year. Navy's a 1-point favorite against Tulsa. That's actually moved up to Navy. They were a 1-point dog a few days ago. They're 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. Their last 4 against Tulsa as AAC foes. 14-0 against the spread. The last 14 as dogs off a straight up win versus a losing team, but now they're the favorite. So keep an eye on that. BYU 1-8 last 9 after a bye. 1-7 last 8 before Boise State. So that's not looking good for BYU with their backup quarterback. Mountain West, Hawaii. All the numbers say go with Boise State. Hawaii 1-13 against the spread last 14 with Mountain West Conference revenge versus an opponent off a straight up win. They're also 1-7 ATS last 8 after a bye. They have been murdered against Boise State recently. Boise has won the last 6 against Hawaii by an average of 37 points per game and covered the last 5 since 2008. The margin, 279-53 the last 6. That's an embarrassment. But remember, at the beginning of the season, I said my pick was Hawaii to play in the, I think they were my top pick, or were they my sleeper to play in the Mountain West Conference Championship game. So they have done everything that I have hoped that they would do. And Boise's, we know how good they are. I get it, okay? I understand that. But I just, as an 11.5-point dog, 350 on a money line, I don't know. It's because I've already been behind them all year. I just have a feeling that maybe they're going to buck those trends. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I might be embarrassed on Saturday night. I get that. But why not back the team that I've been high on since the beginning of the season, and that's what I'm going to do. Nevada is going to start Malik Henry, a quarterback this week, their third starting quarterback of the season. He was the former 4-star Florida State quarterback who went the JUCO route. San Jose State, we've talked about the Brent Brennan doing a good job there. They've covered 3 straight, plus the win against Arkansas. By the way, they are a 2-point dog at Nevada. I might go with San Jose State in that one. I'm taking Fresno State at Air Force. Air Force 1-8 against the spread, last 9 as a home favorite. 1-8 against the spread, last 9 and after Navy game. 0-9 against the spread, last 9 versus 500 teams or less in the Mountain West with revenge on their mind. On the flip side, Fresno has covered 8 straight as dogs with revenge on their mind versus an opponent with revenge on their mind. And let's see. Here's the one I wanted. 10-1 against the spread, the last 11 as dogs versus 500 or winning teams. And they've covered 6 straight as a road dog. So those are the 2 that are really, there's a lot there I really like. And I just like Fresno, as you know, for a 3.5-point dog at Air Force. I also like Wyoming, 3.5 dog against San Diego State. They've covered all 4 games this year. And San Diego State, 2-9 ATS is a home favorite. It's 2-9 in their last 11. And what else? I really like the way Robison's been playing at quarterback for FAU. I've told you about that. 1,057 yards, 11 touchdowns over his last 3 games. I know they never beat Middle Tennessee. They're 1-10 against them in the last 11. But FAU, 10-point favorite. I think I'm going to take them this week, even though this is a pick that Mitch likes. So we're going to go in opposite directions in that one as well. Western Kentucky is 3-0 in the Conference USA, believe it or not. And Clayton White, defensive coordinator, has done a nice job there. Tyson Helton, Clay's brothers, doing a good job. They're 6-0 against the spread. Their last 6 as dogs off back-to-back straight-up ATS wins. And they're playing an Army team that is favored by 4.5. And let's see, what else do I like here in the Conference USA? Nothing. In the MAC, I'm going with Ball State against Eastern Michigan. We liked them last week. We like them again. Now, Eastern Michigan has owned Ball State recently. They've won 3 straight years by a 146-75 margin. But I just love the way Mike New has got this team rolling this year. They didn't have to rely on the quarterback Plitt last week to win. So I'm going to go ahead. They're 5-1 ATS. Last 6 is a road favorite. But now they're a dog. They went from a favorite to a dog this week, so just keep that in mind. But I'm taking Ball State in that one. And I think what else? I think that might be it because we've covered a lot of these games or some of these other games and trends on OFN College Football Weekly with Mitch Light. Both of these shows are going to be available on demand later today at ourlads.com and also at primesportsnetwork.com. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see you tomorrow with the OFN Today NFL with Mark Lawrence from covers.com. So we're going to talk all NFL tomorrow right here on the Our Lads Football Radio Network with Mark Lawrence. Thanks a lot for tuning in once again. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time.